was hoping my friend Carl is coming to look for me, because it was a place nobody finds you otherwise. I was just sliding with the whole new snow, and I was sliding faster and faster. That's the only thing I remember, because I woke up and I was lying under a skidoo. I had an open fracture, 2 bones broken, the bone was sticking out of the flesh, and my jaw was over here, because I knocked myself obviously out. And I didn't know who I was, where I was. And it was only over my field book note that I figured, okay, I'm in the Arctic. Didn't know that. It was a beautiful scenery in front of me. And then the scenery unfortunately changed into a heavy snowstorm. And I tried to fix the skidoo, but it was broken. No chance to fix it. So after about, I think, 18 hours on the ground, I started to call his name every half an hour. And his name was Carl. And after a few hours I lost almost my voice. But I continued to call his name, and that was the luck I had. And then he walked up, and that was 1,000 meters in elevation, 3,000 feet. So he had to walk up there, and then that was the plateau. And when he was there, he heard this very strange craw, craw. And that sounded like a bird. Funny, that could be my name too. So he was walking with this sound. And sure enough, he started to call my name. He came down to that glacier. That's how he found me. And he came, still remember today, with a piece of chocolate. And while he was calling, he was so exhausted, he fell asleep. I was still lying there. Overall, I was approximately 35 hours on the ice there. It was a close call, but I mean, you were lucky, otherwise you wouldn't be here.
We never heard, kind of like, you know, we heard very few stories, and only when he came home he would tell us all the exciting stuff that was happening. And sometimes I have to admit that I was quite happy to only learn about these stories in hindsight. On page 1 it says with the Arctic it was kind of like a situation like love it or leave it. If they like it, they will always be drawn back to it. And I was kind of crushed by that message because I, in a way, I hoped he wouldn't like it that much that he wouldn't go back. But obviously, as we know now, he loved it, and he still loves it after 33 years, and he's still going back every year.
But I really like this, the vast area. When you actually are in the Arctic, you don't see houses, you only see animals and landscape. During my first winter over, when I stayed 7 months on sea ice, I do remember when the sun was setting, and I knew I don't see the sun again for another 3 months. And that was a very special event, and that always stays with me. I had 2 dogs. And I do remember that I went with my dogs on the sea ice, a little bit away from the camp, and I shot a whole roll of film. Then we had slide films when the sun was setting, because I knew I don't see it again. And this stays in my memory. The dogs is very yellowish, low sunlight, and the vast expanse of the sea ice were very hard. Want to buy a research station for $1, and I knew his answer already, because he wrote back immediately, let's buy it for $1. Of course I didn't tell him I need continuous funding. to continue the research. So next season I send another email, need funding for our NASA station. So he had to send money. And that's how we started our long-term measurement. Realized I don't know anything about the north, the west, the top of the ice sheet, the east. So I put about 20 stations up on the ice sheet that are now running continuously, all the 20 since 1995. And this is the long-term record we have today from Greenland. There's no other climate record on the ice sheet. I worked very late in the morning hours just to make sure it was all proper measurements, all errors were accounted for, and I reported, and he was very surprised. I said, "Are you sure? I can't believe this. This is too much warming. Go back to your books and recheck the data." I did, and it was true. We had the warming. We were really surprised that the climate can warm by several degrees over a very short period. It was not known what we understand as the climate. Especially when you and your sister were very small, because that is a time period when you grow fast. And I was gone for several months a year to the Arctic. I was missing my wife and my two kids, you and Annika. And over the years, you're very good with actually sending me off with a lot of small tricks in my luggage. Whenever I was traveling to the Arctic and I was taking out another shoe, another field book, I found either a small note in there or a special piece of chocolate. So whenever I went through my luggage in the Arctic, I found small remarks from my family. And that reminded me an important message, obviously. I was not alone. We were coming along not in person, but in memory. Still remember, you were usually interested in sports. And there was some difference between you and me. I don't know the American sport very well. Football, I know from pictures. I don't even know the rules properly. Baseball, most of the time I find boring because they just hit the ball and then they run after the ball and shoot it back. So what's the whole issue about that sport? And that's where we had, I wouldn't say differences, but you loved the sport. You knew all the statistics. I couldn't care less actually, because I didn't even understand what they meant.
And you know, and not that we're small little kids anymore. I mean, Simon's 19, I'm 21, and we're in the dating scene, but I think Dad's still kind of, in a way, sometimes shocked of how old we actually are now. You know, we're not his little babies anymore. He's kind of missed out on some sense of how we've grown up.
When I was an adolescent, all I cared about was sports, and this didn't sit particularly well with my dad, a global warming warrior. As the Earth continued to grow hotter and more ice melted, the Earth as well as myself became aware of the sleeping giant beginning to awaken and stretch his arms across the world. At first, global warming was only affecting and melting the world's ice reserves, but as I grew older and began to understand why at times I had to play catch with my mom in the backyard was because Dad was out there fighting for the betterment of our planet. But once I did, global warming melted the ice right out of our relationship. I had a sense of pride in what he is doing is for the better good of all of Earth's creatures. I am now old enough to understand I can't be selfish and hog them all to myself. Those instruments don't deploy or fix themselves.